the big build-up to this was the president was going to make an announcement, and Americans expected one of two things: either an escalation of the war, that is perhaps ground troops to go and take Karg Island or go and look for enriched uranium, which is meant to be hidden somewhere in Iran, or an end to the war and off-ramp. Instead, they got neither. It was rambling at times. He talked about how Americans are going to get a bigger tax refund this year. He besmirched previous presidents like Barack Obama, as he often does, and there was really no clarity. And at one point he said that Iran is no longer a threat. But he then talked about, or in the same speech, he talked about how we're going to knock them back into the Stone Age, which I think a lot of Americans would have thought, if they're no threat, why do you want to knock them into the Stone Age? So it was full of a lot of contradictions, and some things were quite bizarre at times about this speech, the material about the Strait of Hormuz, because he said that when the war is over, it will naturally reopen. Now, that is such a bizarre comment if you look at it logically, because one thing that surprised the White House here and the Pentagon, it seems, is the fact that the Iranians have been able to, during this 5 weeks of the war, not just close that Strait of Hormuz, but keep it closed. And that's where the real pressure is coming around the world. That's why farmers in Australia are being hit hard. That's why Anthony Albanese is doing what he's doing in terms of fuel relief. It's because the Iranians essentially have cut off that major artery of oil, and yet Donald Trump saying that it will naturally reopen. Surely the logic of that is strange, because the Americans haven't been able to open it by sheer force along with Israel. So the Iranians are now talking about using it as putting taxes on ships going up and down the strait. So on what basis can President Trump tonight say that it's going to naturally reopen? He says these sort of things, he throws them out there, but then there's no detail or no basis for these comments. And tonight I expected this was going to be more specific, more clarity, and it was rambling Trumpism, as we've seen many times in the last year. The real pressure point for Donald Trump is the fact that the price of a gallon of gas, as they call it here, petrol, as we call it in Australia, has just gone through $4 a gallon. It's gone from $2.75 4 or 5 weeks ago to $4. Now, this is a country far more reliant on the car than many Australians are, because if you're living in rural or regional America, to get your kids to school or to get to work or to work the farm, you need your cars and your tractors. So Americans are really hurting by that sudden increase, and that's the pointy end which Donald Trump is now feeling. And with the midterm elections coming up in November, Republicans are starting to get very nervous that they're going to be in big trouble, and Americans don't like paying $4. So Donald Trump is saying the moment the war's over, just as the Strait of Hormuz will naturally open, he's saying gas prices will drop, stock markets will go back up. And I think a lot of Americans are starting to think now, you keep saying these things, but it's not happening.